From Manila to the globe, this is World Newsfeed, bringing you the biggest stories shaping our times. Good morning, I'm Raine Musñgi. Let's dive into the headlines making a global impact. We begin in Russia, where authorities have granted asylum to Syria's Bashar al-Assad and his family. Russian news agencies reported on Sunday, citing a Kremlin source, that they have arrived in Moscow and that asylum was granted on humanitarian grounds. There was no sign of visible activity inside the Syrian embassy on Moscow the day Syrian rebels declared they had ousted President al-Assad after seizing control of the capital Damascus and ending nearly 6 decades of his family's iron-fisted rule after a lightning advance that reversed the course of a 13-year civil war. The Russian Foreign Ministry said on Sunday that Assad had left office and departed the country after giving orders there be a peaceful handover of power. It also said Russia's military bases in Syria had put on a state of high alert, but there was no serious threat to them at the current time. In one of the most consequential turning points in the Middle East for generations, the fall of Assad's government wiped out a bastion from which Iran and Russia exercised influence across the Arab world. Well, Syrians wasted little time removing traces of Bashar al-Assad after Syrian rebels said on Sunday that they have ended his 24-year authoritarian rule in their first announcement on state television following a lightning 12-day offensive. Social media footage showed a man standing on top of a car porch at Damascus Dar al-Shifa Hospital. The man proceeded to tear down a picture of Assad, which was hanging on the facade of the building. Celebrations erupted in the Syrian city of Homs on Sunday morning following the rebels' announcement that they had seized full control of the city. Local residents were raising peace signs, and while rebels fired guns in celebration in the streets. Citizens expressed joy and relief, with some burning photos of Assad who relinquished his control after 13 years civil war and 6 decades of the family's autocratic rule. Intermittent gunfire rang out in apparent celebration. Shops and restaurants closed early in line with a curfew imposed by the rebels. Inmates poured out of jails after rebels blasted away locks on their cells. They reunited families and wept and wailed in joy for Syrians. It brought a sudden, unexpected end to a war in deep freeze for years, with hundreds of thousands dead, cities pounded to dust, and an economy hollowed out by global sanctions. The top rebel commander, Abu Mohammed al-Golani, told a huge crowd at the medieval Umayyad Mosque in central Damascus that with hard work, Syria would be a beacon for the Islamic nation. Assad's sudden overthrow at the hands of a revolt partly backed by Turkey and with roots in jihadist Sunni Islam limits Iran's ability to spread weapons to its allies and could cost Russia its Mediterranean naval base. It may pave the way for millions of refugees scattered for more than a decade in camps across Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan to finally return home.
This victory, my brothers, is a new chapter in the history of the entire Islamic nation. It is a turning point for the region. How many dangers have we avoided? Assad handed Syria over to Iranian ambitions, spreading sectarianism and corruption throughout the country. This entire battle, my brothers, which has unfolded thanks to God, is purely revolutionary. We did not seek help from anyone, nor did anyone support us. Instead, we relied entirely on ourselves, on our own resources and efforts. All this achievement came from our work alone. You witnessed the missiles we made, the bombs we created, and the planning we executed, all as part of revolutionary actions. Within 11 days, by God's grace, Syria was liberated from its north to its south and from its east to its west. This is God's support. Thanks to God, we have witnessed with our own eyes how 13 years of suffering are being healed through this great victory.
His real name being Ahmed al-Shara, Jolani is leader of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham or HTS rebel faction, formerly known as the Nusra Front, and designated a terrorist group by much of the world. The U.S. designated Jolani a terrorist in 2013, saying al-Qaeda in Iraq had tasked him with overthrowing Assad's rule and establishing Islamic Sharia law in Syria. Jolani expanded from the 6 men who accompanied him from Iraq to 5,000 within a year. But he said that his group had never presented a threat to the West. Despite the celebrations and relative quiet in Syria, Israel conducted 3 airstrikes in the Syrian capital against a security complex and government research center, which it said in the past was used by Iran to develop missiles. 2 regional security sources told Reuters that an explosion was seen in the Metza district of the Syrian capital Damascus in a video released on Sunday. Israeli tanks were deployed along the ceasefire line between Syria and Israeli-occupied Golan Heights as Syrian rebels declared President Bashar al-Assad's ouster after seizing control of Damascus. The Israeli military said it has deployed forces in the UN-monitored buffer zone with Syria and at a number of points necessary for defense in light of the latest events in the Arab country. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hailed the ousting of Syria's al-Assad as an historic day that followed the blows delivered by Israel against Assad supporters Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon.
This is a historic day for the Middle East. The collapse of the Assad regime, the tyranny in Damascus, offers great opportunity, but also is fraught with significant dangers. This collapse is a direct result of our forceful action against Hezbollah and Iran, Assad's main supporters. It set off a chain reaction of all those who want to free themselves from this tyranny and its oppression.
Israel has been carrying out airstrikes against Iran-linked targets in Syria for years, but has ramped up such raids since last year's October 7 attack by Palestinian group Hamas on Israeli territory that sparked the Gaza war. Iranian ambassador to Syria blamed Israel for the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. Hossein Akbari accused Israel of arming rebels and providing them with support, while suggesting the Syrian regime also gave up on the fight.
The countries that supported this war against Syria trend during this time and supported it, well, their goal was to put serious pressure on Bashar al-Assad, and Bashar al-Assad's crime was that he was on the front end of the axis of the resistance. Everything that was left was attacked and damaged today, and this is against international laws. Of course, those who are occupying this country in some way and moved, they should have predicted this, but they did not predict this. Determining the fate of Syria is only the responsibility of the people of this country. In a statement, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs described Iran's position as respecting the unity and national sovereignty and territorial integrity of Syria and emphasized that the determination of the future of Syria is the sole responsibility of the people of this country without destructive interference or foreign imposition. The end of military conflicts as soon as possible, preventing terrorist acts, starting national dialogues with the participation of all Syrian spectrums to form a comprehensive government, ensuring the security of all Syrian citizens and nationals of all countries, and preserving the sanctity of religious holy places and protecting diplomatic and consular places are among other things which are emphasized in the statement of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Well, the United States will work with partners and stakeholders in Syria to help seize an opportunity and manage the risk. U.S. President Joe Biden said on Sunday after rebel fighters overthrew Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. In remarks at the White House, Biden said the U.S. will support Syria's neighbors through the period of transition and will assess the words and actions of rebel groups. The outgoing American leader said the U.S. noted reports that Assad fled to Moscow and that he should be held accountable. Biden also said U.S. forces on Sunday conducted a dozen precision strikes within Syria, targeting camps and operatives of the militant group Islamic State. He explained that Syria is in a period of risk and uncertainty, and that it is the first time in years that neither Russia nor Iran nor the Hezbollah militant organization held an influential role in Syria. Biden noted that the U.S. will support the establishment of a new independent Syrian government, but will be wary against actors who have a history of terrorism or human rights abuses.
Our approach has shifted the balance of power in the Middle East. Through this combination of support for our partners, sanctions, diplomacy, and targeted military force when necessary, we now see new opportunities opening up for the people of Syria and for the entire region. Looking ahead, the United States will do the following. First, we'll support Syria's neighbors, including Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, and Israel, should any threat arise from Syria during this period of transition. I will speak with leaders of the region in the coming days. I had long discussions with all of our people earlier this morning. And I'll send senior officials from my administration to the region as well. Second, we will help ensure stability in eastern Syria, protecting any personnel, our personnel, against any threats, and will remain our mission against ISIS will be maintained, including the security of detention facilities where ISIS fighters are being held as prisoners. We're clear-eyed about the fact that ISIS will try to take advantage of any vacuum to reestablish its capabilities and to create a safe haven. We will not let that happen. We will engage with all Syrian groups, including within the process led by the United Nations, to establish a transition away from the Assad regime toward independent, sovereign, independent, I want to say it again, sovereign Syria, with a new constitution, a new government that serves all Syrians. And this process will be determined by the Syrian people themselves. And the United States will do whatever we can to support them, including through humanitarian relief, to help restore Syria after more than a decade of war and generations of brutality by the Assad family. And finally, we will remain vigilant. Make no mistake, some of the rebel groups that took down Assad have their own grim record of terrorism and human rights abuses. We've taken note of statements by the leaders of these rebel groups in recent days, and they're saying the right things now. But as they take on greater responsibility, we will assess not just their words, but their actions. And we are mindful that there are Americans in Syria, including those who reside there, as well as Austin Tice, who was taken captive more than 12 years ago. We remain committed to returning him to his family.
Well, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump said that Russia had lost all interest in Syria given its war in Ukraine. Posting on Truth social media and X, Trump added that Moscow never should have protected him in the first place and then lost interest because of a war in Ukraine that never should have started. The re-election as president said that both Russia and Iran had been weakened in part because of Israel's military success in the Middle East. Trump, who has said he will seek to halt the Ukraine war rapidly, met Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky on Saturday in Paris, where they were both attending a ceremony to reopen the Notre Dame Cathedral, called for an immediate ceasefire and for talks to resume. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer welcomed the end of President Bashar al-Assad's brutal regime. Speaking from Abu Dhabi Sunday to begin a multi-day trip to the Gulf, Starmer said it was important to find a political way forward. Stability in the Middle East is expected to be high up in the agenda during his visit to the region, including the pressing need for a ceasefire between Israel and Gaza, the release of all hostages, and the urgent acceleration of aid into Gaza.
I welcome the fact that Assad has gone. The Syrian people had to put up with his brutal regime for far, far too long. We're talking to regional allies. It's very important now that there's a political settlement, a political way forward. And it's very, very important that we emphasise that civilians and minorities must be protected in this process. It's very early days. At the moment, our engagement is with our allies, making sure that we're making that case for a political settlement here. We have to see this as an opportunity for the future of Syria, the future that's been denied for so long, that's a future without the terrorism and violence that we've seen far too much of in this brutal regime. So it's a real opportunity. We're talking to regional allies about how we take that opportunity for a political settlement.
Germany stands with the Syrians, hoping for a free and peaceful future, and said Germany would offer its support. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz says he wishes to see a Syria a comprehensive in national dialogue, an orderly and peaceful transition process, and ultimately a political solution to the conflict where possible.
Der syrische Präsident Assad hat über mehr als ein Jahrzehnt sein eigenes Volk.
Today we stand with all Syrians who are full of hope for a free, just and safe Syria. Whether they live in Syria itself or abroad, they have all followed the events over the last few days with the greatest tension. They fervently hope that there is now a chance to rebuild their country and embark on the long and difficult road to reconciliation. Many not only have hope, but of course also worries. They wonder what will happen next. After all, there are also radical and extremist forces among the resistance fighters. What matters now is that Syria can quickly live in law and order, and that law and order are established there. All religious communities, all ethnic groups and minorities must enjoy protection. All Syrians must be given the opportunity to live in dignity and self-determination. This is how we will measure the next Syrian government. Syria's territorial integrity and sovereignty are of crucial importance for its future. No country is the backyard of another. The illegitimate interference of third parties must end, and Syria must live in peace with its neighbors.
Well, the upending of Syria's political order offers Syrians the historical opportunity to imagine the possibility to really create social and political movements and be able to talk freely and openly about the corruption and about rights violations. That's according to an analyst. Dr. Haid, a fellow at Chatham House, expects the prospect of building a political future facing steep challenges because the country remains divided under the control of different militias, and Syrian exile groups will also be trying to assert influence. The analyst also said it remains to be seen how the international community will respond to the prominent role being played by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a former al-Qaeda affiliate, which led the offensive against the Assad regime, even as it is projecting moderation.
You have one of the major groups in Syria, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, is listed as a terrorist group. So this then brings questions as to how to deal with the group itself has been signaling that they are willing to share power, that they have changed their ideology, and they have acted in a very disciplined way. They gave assurances to minorities in the areas they captured, but also they were able to, as I said, protect the areas, prevent violations, and signal that they could even potentially allow someone else to lead or participate in governing the areas they captured.
Meanwhile, it also sees positive political change in Syria, potentially spurring calls for political change in neighboring Arab countries, which experienced a wave of mass protests and calls for change in 2011, but which have stagnated since politically. Ukraine says the fall of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad underscores Russia's weakness and inability to fight on two fronts. Ukraine's foreign ministry said in a statement that Moscow's 33-month-old invasion of Ukraine has sapped considerable military resources. Ukraine intelligence says Russian forces in Syria had withdrawn its warships from the naval base in Syria, which Assad had allowed Moscow to use as payment for his security, and that Russian aircraft were moving the remnants of their weapons and military equipment from Khmeimim Air Base. Meanwhile, Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky held talks in Paris on Saturday on concern that Trump, who takes office next month, could withdraw U.S. military aid to Ukraine at a crucial juncture in Kyiv's battle to repel Russia.
First of all, I would like to thank President Emmanuel Macron for organizing this meeting. important meeting between Emmanuel, myself, and President Trump. It was a very good meeting. It was constructive. The mood was important. The fact that we talked about Ukraine, only about Ukraine and the Ukrainian people and how to support them, about how strong Ukrainians are, how resilient to have withstood all this invasion, the Russian aggression. We all want peace. For us, and this is our position, we want the peace to be just for us and that Russia, Putin, or any other aggressor would have an opportunity to come back in the future. This is what's most important, just peace and security guarantees. Strong security guarantees for Ukraine. We have agreed to continue working.
When we come back, an update from South Korea and sports and a joke from outgoing U.S. President Joe Biden.
Magandang araw, Pilipinas! Sa bawat issue may iba't ibang anggulo. Sa bawat storya may iba't ibang kwento.
Himayin natin ang bawat sulok at bawat kanto mula sa iba't ibang perspektibo na madaling maintindihan ng karaniwang mamamayan.
Every Saturday na mga magdadag to 11:30 a.m. Kaya huwag kayong papahuli mga kabayan. Manatiling may pakialam sa mga issue sa ating bansa kaya samahan niyo kami. Dito lang sa Cuatro Cantos!
For the past 2 days, there have been many positive feedback. We have many guests. A lot of walk-ins reach more than 1 million in sales. This is very good news, of course, for our exhibitors. And there are many interests now. Of course, it's not only the agri products that we feature, but also the programs and activities that we do.
Welcome back to your World Newsfeed. South Korean President Yoon managed to avoid impeachment over the weekend by just a handful of votes, but pressure for him to step down is only intensifying. With mounting public anger in Seoul and Yoon's approval rating nearing single digits, Bloomberg reports that Yoon's allies huddled on Sunday to find a way for him to quietly step aside. They want the president to go away without needing to vote for his impeachment, a move that could upset supporters and hurt the party in a subsequent election. That search for a creative solution prompted Han Dong-hoon, the leader of Yoon's People Power Party, to declare on Sunday that Prime Minister Han Duck-soo would manage the nation's affairs from now on, including its security alliance with the U.S. Yonhap News reported Sunday that the South Korean prosecutor's office opened a treason investigation into Yoon over his declaration of martial law last week. If he's eventually found guilty, a process that could take months or years, he could face life in prison or even death. The political drama is roiling markets and distracting South Korea at a crucial time. The export-reliant nation faces new tariff warnings from U.S. President-elect Donald Trump and increased threats to its security as North Korea strengthens its military alliance with Russia. In another political crisis in Romania, democracy was canceled after a top court annulled the presidential election. Far-right candidate Călin Georgescu had been contesting the election. He made the comments outside the school in the village of Mogosoia, where he had been allowed or been due to cast his ballot before the Constitutional Court's decision came on Friday.
We shall continue in the democratic manner. I ask very clear for peace, for all the things which we have to recuperate our democracy, because the democracy was cancelled with a court.
The court's decision plunged Romania, a member of the European Union and NATO, into institutional chaos and has raised concern that public trust in the state could be eroded. No date has been set yet for the rerun. Supporters chanted Georgescu for president and peace as their candidate spoke. Supporters Sorin Skuratovski said the court's decision was an attack on democracy. supporters of John Dramani Mahama celebrated outside his office in Accra on Sunday after the former president won Ghana's presidential election. Vice President Mahamudu Bawumia conceded defeat, saying internal data showed Mahama had won decisively. Bawumia added that Mahama's National Democratic Congress also secured victory in the parliamentary vote. Mahama, 66 years old, who previously served as president from 2012 to 2017, staged a political comeback with his election victory, marking a return to power for him and the NDC party. Vice President made the announcement before official results were released, aiming to ease tensions following reports of scuffles at some local constituency centers where votes were still being tallied. On to sports news now. Shifting gears to Formula One, Lando Norris saving the best for last as he leads McLaren to the Constructors' Championship in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. McLaren ends a 26-year championship drought dating back to 1998. A bittersweet ending, though, for Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. The six-time world champ finished fourth in Abu Dhabi for his final race with Mercedes. Hamilton will race under the Ferrari banner next year. Paris Catholics reunited with Notre Dame Cathedral on Sunday as the first Mass open to the public was held at the holy site. The evening Mass followed a consecration earlier in the day with dignitaries and French President Emmanuel Macron, during which Paris Archbishop Laurent Ulrich inaugurated the renovated cathedral. It was in April 2019 when a fire raged through the cathedral. Notre Dame has since been meticulously restored with a new spire and rib vaulting. Its flying buttresses and carved stone gargoyles return to their past glory, and white stone and gold decorations shining brightly once again. Thousands of experts, from carpenters and stonemasons to stained glass window artists, worked around the clock for the last 5 years using age-old methods to restore, repair, or replace everything that was destroyed or damaged. More than $880 million poured in for the renovation from all over the world, with some funds left over for further investment in the building.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, may the Lord be with you. Brothers and sisters, dear friends, what emotion for the rector that I am to see this cathedral full. 5 years after its destruction, here it is standing again. Here it is again ready to welcome the prayers of the faithful.
The cathedral's first stone was laid in 1163 and construction continued for much of the next century, with major restoration and additions made in the 17th and 18th centuries. Victor Hugo helped make the cathedral a symbol of Paris and France when he used it as a setting for his 1831 novel, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Quasimodo, the main character, has been portrayed in Hollywood movies, an animated Disney adaptation, and in musicals. Well, yes, President Joe Biden paid tribute to this year's Kennedy Center honorees at the White House on Sunday. Filmmaker Francis Ford Coppola, members of the Grateful Dead, singer Bonnie Raitt, jazz musician Arturo Sandoval, and the Apollo Theater will be celebrated at the 47th Annual Kennedy Center Honors. Now, as he spoke about multiple Oscar winner Coppola, the outgoing American leader asked actor and Coppola collaborator Robert De Niro to stand and joked that he would call him if he were to get in trouble, and seemed to apply for employment with a multi-awarded director.
Fostering talent before they were stars, like previous Kennedy Center honorees who are here tonight. Robert De Niro. Robert, stand up. I'm a big fan, man. I want everybody to see it. If I get in trouble, I'm coming to you, pal. Well, Francis, I'm looking for work in February. So maybe you've got something for me and the Biden-De Niro combination here. I can't sing, I can't act, I can't dance, do a damn thing, but I can help you.
And that's all for now. Thank you so much for joining us. Catch up with us again tomorrow at 10 when we bring you The World in 30 Minutes, only on World Newsfeed. Follow the Money comes next. Keep it here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel, always on top.